agaram-um-āgi, adipanu-māgi, adhikamum-āgi, aham-āgi, ayanana-vāgi, hariyana-vāgi, haranana-vāgi, avar-mēlāi. Did you notice that all these 8 started with a? If you didn't, listen again. agaram-um-āgi, adipanu-māgi, adhikamum-āgi, aham-āgi, ayanana-vāgi, hariyana-vāgi, haranana-vāgi, avar-mēlāi. The next 3 would start with E, not with U, as you would expect. Just listen in. ஈகரமுமாகி எவைகளுமாகி இனிமையுமாகி வருவோனே. The last 3 actually 4 more start with E. இருநில மீதில் எளியும் வாழ எனது முன்னோடி வரவேணும். And then the last set, as anticipated, would start with மகபதியாகி மருவும் வளாரி மகிழ்களி கூறும் வடிவோனே. வனமுறை வேடன் அருளிய பூஜை மகிழ்கதிர் காமன் உதயோனே. ஜெககண ஜெகுதகு திமிதோதி திமியன ஆடும் மயிலோனே. திருமலிவான பழமுதிர் சோலை மலைமிசை மேவும் Perumale. So the first set started with A. The second set started with E. And the third set started with M. Just hold on to this. I'll come back to that. Formalities first. Namaskaram, folks. Namaskaram, Vasanthi-mā. Swami Devame. Taye. Taimanne Vanakkam. In this episode of our channel, your offering will be agaram-um-āgi, which has been immensely popularized in the last 6 centuries by 3 unlikely groups, yet alike. First and foremost, the innumerable singing temple priests or oduvars of Murugan temples in particular, but Shaivite temples in general. These oduvars who sang this song in the Vedic Chandas format, pioneered and promoted in Tamil by the child prodigy amongst the 63 Nayanmars, Thiru Sambandar, almost a millennia prior. Manasika Guru, like how Dronacharya was to Ekalavya, and role model of today's phenomenal mystic poet saint, Sri aruna-giri-nāthar. That was the first, the oduvars who popularized tiru-pugazh. Secondly, Carnatic musicians, vocalists, and instrumentalists in the ragam format as opposed to the chandas format in which the oduvars predominantly sang it. Nowadays, some of the oduvars also sing it in the Carnatic ragam format. And finally, of course, the devoted bhaktas like us in the freestyle format that the poet himself, Sri aruna-giri-nāthar himself, so graciously allowed and accommodated, because for him, bhakti was the predominant importance in this whole thing, the bhava more than the raga and the thala. Of course, he had spent enormous investment into the lyrics or the sahitya, but that also was because of his bhakti. So he understood that other bhaktas needed the freestyle in terms of ragam and talam. So the poet so graciously allowed and accommodated as universally accessible, simpleton devotion was his primary intent, rather than grammatical constructs, musical lexicon, and rhythmic math, which all anyway just fell into place automatically for such a profoundly sanctified, blessed and graced genius of Sri Aruna-giri-nāthar. In fact, he used complex prosody and thala patterns in his innumerable compositions on Lord Murugan, many of which have unfortunately been lost. We have about 10%, and that itself runs into thousands. Imagine the amount of compositions he must have written. But even whatever still remains, those few thousands, are many a lifetime's investments. I didn't tell lifetime apostrophe yes, but lifetime's apostrophe investment, many lifetimes investment for many oduvars, musicians, and bhaktas alike. Agaram-um is a traditional offering of glorious praise of tiru-pugazh, glorious praise to the energetic six-headed symbol of our own stable self-establishment of the swadhisthana at our solar plexus, a couple of inches below the navel at the backbone into the spinal cord, the second of the chakras. Handpicked from the sixfold garrisons of our inner armed forces, the Arupadai tiru-pugazh, this Paramudir Cholai tiru-pugazh, like every one of its twinning couplet siblings, is an antique gem of Sri Aruna-giri-nāthar. Our prosperously, that is Sri, awakening twilight, Aruna, peaking Giri into venerable leadership, Nāthar. Yes, Sri Aruna-giri-nāthar is nothing but our prosperously awakening twilight, peaking into venerable leadership. The melody or ragam for today's song is sindu-bhairavi. But as I said, bhaktas can take a lot of freedom with changing the ragas as well. Let's see what Vasanthi-mā offers to us today. Sindu-bhairavi, if she does choose it, is born out of the 10th Melakarta, out of the 72 that you know. Yes, it is Nataka Priya Janya. The rhythm of or thalam for today is again the antique ancient Adi. Immeasurably rich in flora, fauna, fruits, veggies, and natural springs, Paramudir Cholai, and Kadir-kamam, the two consecrated spaces associated with and explicitly mentioned in today's song, though far apart in southern Tamil Nadu and southern Sri Lanka, southern TN and southern SL, STN and SSL, have a common feature of geographically hilly, historically tribal, hunter-gatherer communities of masculine willpower symbolized by Valli, alias our Pingala, Suryanadi, alias Kama or desire. In Ganapati Atharva-Shirshopanishad, we refer to ourselves as Tvam Brahma, Tvam Vishnus, Tvam Rudras, Tvam Indras, Tvam Agnis, Tvam Vayus, Tvam Suryas, Tvam Chandramas, Tvam Brahma Bhur-bhavasavarom. Here, in this song also, we see a similar attribution of every aspect of our divinity to our valor at the Swadhisthana Chakra, the second of the 7 higher or upper or elevated or evolved chakras. As most of you already know, alankāra, Om, is composed of 3 syllables, akara, ukara and makara, which according to the Mandukya Upanishad, the ultimate Upanishad, which is the very essence of Vedanta and Advaita. These 3, akara, ukara, makara, components of alankāra correspond to our waking, dream and deep sleep states. Akara is waking, ukara is dream, and makara is deep sleep. As 3/4, yes, there's the 4th one, 3/4 of our existence, with the pause in between 2 oms. Notice the pause between the 2 oms. That unifies the entire existence, because 3/4 never make a whole. Waking, dream and deep sleep by themselves don't make a whole. Akara, ukara, makara by themselves don't make a whole. WHOLE, that is. And HOLE, of course, into the black hole. So, with the pause between the 2 oms unifies the entire existence through the all-encompassing and all-pervading state of not Jagrita, not Swapna, not Sushupta, but Turiya, beyond all boundaries and beyond all materials into the realm of the metaphysical truth. In this cryptically mystical poem, Sri Aruna-giri-nāthar evokes the akara explicitly in the very first word of the song. You heard it right, agaram-um, and continues to do so implicitly in every word of the first stanza. You heard it 8 times, remember? He then shifts not to ukara, as in the Mandukya Upanishad, but to ikara, and concludes as anticipated with makara. Now, akara and ukara, a and u, join together to form o, and therefore aum becomes om. Similarly, akara and ikara join together to become e, and it is aim instead of om, and concludes as anticipated with makara. So that makes up the seed or bija mantra aim, usually associated with, any guesses? Yes, aum aim hreem kleem chamundayai vichche swaha, where aim is for the Vishuddhi, Saraswati, hreem is for Lakshmi at the Anahata, and Kleem is for Kali or Durga or Parvati at the Agnya. These 3 Shaktis that are there. Out of them, Aim is associated with Saraswati, who of course, as you know, represents jnana, knowledge, or vijnana, wisdom, which is also the realm of jnana vijnana pandita, Tandaikke Guruvana Swaminatha Muruga, our valor on which this and every song of Sri Aruna-giri-nāthar pretty much is focused upon. A, or A, is the first letter of the alphabet, the leader, the greatest, the inner self, the creator, the protector, the destroyer, beyond them too, being all things in this world and everything in every world, because it's the seed which becomes the tree, remember? The 8 times that akara is referred to right in the beginning of this song are aptly agaram-um-agi, adipanum-agi, adikamum-agi, aham-agi, ayanenavagi, hariyenavagi, haranenavagi, avarmelai. Sri Aruna-giri-nāthar then graduates to the second quarter of E. Igaram-um-agi, evaigalum-agi, inimayum-agi varuvone, irunila meedil elimayum vaழ எனது munodi varavenum. And finally, Sri Aruna-giri-nāthar has the third quarter for us with Makara. Mahapatiyagi maruvum valari magilkali kurum vadivone, and a few other makaras in the remaining stanzas as well. You'll hear it in much more beautiful voice and way of singing with the Carnatic raga by Vasanthi-mā shortly. The 8 akaras, 3 ikaras, and 3 makaras thus combine as aim to invoke jnana-karaka, jnana-pandita, muruga. The principle of muruga, nothing but our own keenly perceptive valor. Yes, most people have valor, confidence without any capabilities. No, here there's a keen perception because of the 18 eyes of Muruga. Yes, he has 6 faces and 3 eyes on each one of them. So 6 into 3, 18 eyes. So imagine the kind of perception that this guy has. Yes, our valor, true valor that is, has keen perception as its basis, as its foundation. Blind courage, blind confidence has been destructive for most part in the world, as you've all seen. But that's not what we are talking about. It's the 18-eyed, keen perception-based valor that we are talking about. So the principle of Muruga, nothing but our own keenly perceptive valor and courage to do what? To muster the support of all of our passionate aggression, that is the rajasic gunas, to defeat our inertial lethargy and laziness, that is our tamasic gunas, thus being endowed with the first 3 of the 4 purusharthas. Yes, Muruga fought for the devas against the asuras, but the devas nothing but our own rajasic gunas that we deal with every day, and the asuras are nothing but our own tamasic gunas that we have to deal with every day. So that war that Muruga conducted was not somewhere in the past history alone, but happens every moment of the day, in every one of our lives. And what do we get in terms of victory over there? Just like what Muruga got, endowed with the first 3 of the 4 purusharthas in the form of dharma or veil. In fact, that is essential even before getting into the war, because that's the primary weapon, the lance, because of which Muruga is a lancer. And then that is dharma, the first purushartha in the form of veil. The second, artha or devyani, the wealth, the resources. Then the third, kama, desire or valli. So these are the 3 of the 4 purusharthas that he got as part of this package job package, so to speak. Who? Not some person Muruga somewhere, but our own keenly perceptive valor, embodied as a person called Muruga. And finally, seeking the fourth of the four Purusharthas, which is moksha, nirvana, mukti, or liberation from the seemingly never-ending cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. Such keenly perceptive valor and courage of ours is actually all-pervading and all-encompassing. For an infinitesimal body, mind, intellect toolkit like ours, how big are we? Maximum 6 feet, 6.5 feet? And the width might be about 2 feet, 3 feet maximum. And just look at how vast just your home is, your town is, your country is, your planet Earth is, your solar system is, your Milky Way galaxy is, and your universe. Just take your volume and divide by the volume of the universe. Obviously, it is zero, right? So for an infinitesimal body, mind, and intellect toolkit like ours, to survive in this infinite world, it definitely and unmistakably requires the light of our keenly perceptive valor and courage to brightly shine forth, thus brightening our path to enlightenment. Now let me have Vasanthi-mā sing this song for you, and then I would come up with an Advaitic interpretation, phrase by phrase this time. So don't miss it out. Vasanthi-mā.
Sa pa sa pa sa. விழிக்கு துணை திருமென்மலர் பாதங்கள், விழிக்கு துணை திருமென்மலர் பாதங்கள், மெய்மை குன்றா மொழிக்கு துணை முருகாவெனும் நாமங்கள், விழிக்கு துணை திருமென்மலர் பாதங்கள், மெய்மை குன்றா மொழிக்கு துணை முருகாவெனும் நாமங்கள், முருகாயெனும் நாமங்கள். முன்பு செய்த பழிக்கு துணை அவன் பன்னிரு தோள்களோ, முன்பு செய்த பழிக்கு துணை அவன் பன்னிரு தோள்களோ, பயந்த தனி வழிக்கு துணை வடிவேலும் செங்கோடமும் மயூரமுமே, பயந்த தனி வழிக்கு துணை வடிவேலும் செங்கோடமும் மயூரமுமே, முருகாவெனும் நாமமே, பயந்த வழிக்கு துணை வடி முருகாவெனும் நாமமே, பயந்த தனி வழிக்கு துணை முருகா குமரா குகா சண்முகா எனும் நாமமே, கந்தா கடம்பா கார்த்திகேயா பயந்த தனி வழிக்கு துணை வடிவேலும் செங்கோடமும் மயூரமுமே அகரமுமாகி அதிபனுமாகி அதிகமுமாகி அகமாகி அகரமுமாகி அதிபனுமாகி அதிகமுமாகி அகமாகி அயனெனவாகி அரியனவாகி அரனெனவாகி அவர் மேல அகரமுமாகி அதிபனுமாகி அதிகமுமாகி அகமாகி அயனெனவாகி அரியனவாகி அரனெனவாகி அவர் மேலாய் இகரமும் ஆகி எவைகளுமாகி இனிமையுமாகி வருவோனே இகரமும் ஆகி எவைகளுமாகி இனிமையுமாகி வருவோனே இருநிலம் மீதில் எளியனோ வாழ எனது முன் ஓடி வரவேணோ இருநிலம் மீதில் எளியனோ வாழ எனது முன் ஓடி வரவேணும் மகப்பதியாகி மருவுமலாரி மகிழ்களி கூறும் வடிவோனே மகப்பதியாகி மருவுமலாரி மகிழ்களி கூறும் வடிவோனே வனமுறை வேடன் அருளிய பூஜை வனமுறை வேடன் அருளிய பூஜை மகிழ்கதிர்காமோ முடையோனே ஜகக்கணச்சேகு தகுதிமி தோதி திமியன ஆடும் மயிலோனே 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 చగకన చేగు తగు తిమితోది తిమియనగాడుం మయిలోనే చగకన చేగు తగు తిమితోది తిమియనగాడుం మయిలోనే చగకన చేగు తగు తిమితోది తిమియనగాడుం மயிலோனே திருமலிவான பழமுதி சோலை திருமலிவான பழமுதி சோலை திருமலிவான பழமுதி சோலை மலை மிசை மேவும் பெருமாளே திருமலிவான பழமுதி சோலை மலை மிசை மேவும் பெருமாளே இருநிலம் மீதில் எளியனும் வாழ எனது முன் ஓடி வரவேணும் பழமுதிச்சோலை முருகா அழகர் கோவில் முருகா எனது முன் ஓடி வரவேணும் எனது முன் ஓடி வரவேணும் முருகா எனது முன் ஓடி வரவேணும்
முருகனே ஓடி வந்துட்டேன். Now for the phrase by phrase interpretation that I promised all of you. Let's start with the first phrase, agaram-um, transforming into, evolving into, becoming, and eventually being is agi. And this word agi is used again and again in this song. That is a very important thing. Agi means becoming. But it's not just becoming, because I was that, I am that, and I will be that forever. Just that I've lost my perception of that. So, because I'm thinking I'm something else, therefore, I have to transform into all these things. And what is the first thing that agi has to do for? It is agaram. Akaram in Tamil becomes agaram because ka, ka, ga, ga are all the same in Tamil. Very rudimentary in terms of how the written language and the phonetics is. And therefore, because it's the most ancient, obviously that's the seed, and the seed is always rudimentary compared to the tree. But that very seed is the one which becomes the tree. So we have to respect that as the very source. So in that sense, that we said in aum, akara, ukara, makara, and in aim, we said akara, ikara, makara. That akara is here said to be agaram. Actually, it is akara. Agaram-um. Is to say and. It's a conjunction because he's going to tell many other things that we want to become. Because we are that, but we have forgotten that, so we have to become. So ummagi will keep coming again and again. What's important is the word before that in each phrase. So here it is agaram. So what am I transforming into, evolving into, becoming, and eventually being here? What am I agi here? The foremost as or a, which is of course the foremost letter in perhaps all languages, including of course the most ancient Tamil and Sanskrit, as well as currently the most popular English, Hindi, Telugu, Kannada, Marathi, whatever you have, Gujarati, etc., Bengali. Adipanumagi is the second phrase. Here what we are talking about the agi. What are we transforming into, evolving into, becoming and eventually being? We are being Adipan. What is Adipan? The leader. The victorious Chief of Defense Staff, CDS. Supreme Commander-in-Chief. And leader of all of our sensual and passionately aggressive action potential, Rajasic Gunas, Devas, winning over not only our impotent inertia, lethargy, and laziness, Ashuras, Tamasic Gunas, but also the knowledge-powered economic might of action, Kriya Shakti, alias Devayani, Artha, Ida, Chandranadi on our and Murugan's left. As in Tiruparangundram, which is not mentioned in this song, but is in other tiru-pugazhs. We'll come to that later when it's sung. But today's focus will be more on Valli. But nonetheless, he's already talked about Adipanumagi, the leadership capabilities of our valor and courage. The next, we have done the fact that we are the foremost, we are the source, Akara. We are done with the fact that we are the leader, Adipan. And next, Adikamumagi. What are we transforming into, evolving into, becoming and eventually being? Agi here. We are becoming Adikam. Adikam means Adik in Hindi also, Sanskrit also, is a lot. So the greatest, in fact, Adikam amongst all, the greatest amongst all. That's what we are. We have to recognize that. By virtue of the infinitely overall responsibility. How do we become the greatest? How do we recognize that we are the greatest? Only through our infinitely overall responsibility. I am responsible for everything. I have an infinite, unbounded, limitless ability to respond consciously with full awareness in any situation whatsoever. Not to react, not to blame others, not to blame myself, not to blame even the grahas or my horoscope, but to accept absolute responsibility, knowing fully well that this entire universe operates on the law of cause and effect. What to speak of this minuscule body, mind, and intellect? That's the law of karma, my dear friends. Right? So, accept responsibility. We keep blaming our spouse, our children, our parents, our siblings. This is at home. Then go beyond the home to our friends, relatives, enemies, colleagues, and all kinds of people, the politicians, businessmen, for our problems. They are all postmen and women. Yes, in today's parlance, courier boys and courier girls, or email systems, mail servers, who are just delivering what belongs to us, what has been addressed to us. If we avoid one of these postmen or postwomen or courier boys or courier girls in our life, some other courier boy, some other courier girl, some other postman, some other postwoman will come and deliver the same package to you, my dear friend, sooner or later. So you better accept it the very first time it's brought, because they are not going to leave you. What belongs to you will come to you, whether you consider it good, bad, beautiful, ugly, pleasant, disgusting, doesn't matter. You've done some actions, you've spoken some words, you have thought some thoughts, either in this life or in any one of the previous lives, either as humans or as any other living being. That ought to come back to you sometime or the other, either in the same life or in some other life. And so many people like your husband, wife, son, daughter, father, mother, brother, sister, friends, enemies, so-called colleagues, and all other distant ones like politicians, businessmen, corporators, and who not. keeps giving you all kinds of things which you think doesn't belong to you. But no, nothing comes to you unless it belongs to you. Whether it is an action, a word, or a thing, or a thought, they all come to you if and only if your karma reflects that. So you better get done with all of that and recognize all the people in your life as courier boys, courier girls, postmen and women, however close or far they might be to you in terms of so-called relationships. Okay? So, by virtue of the infinitely overall responsibility that our nascently young, childlike, yet keenly perceptive valor assumed to subsume internal obstacles symbolized by Sura Padman, Tarakasuran, et al., etc., the others. That is Adhikamumagi. That's even as a child, Muruga took up that responsibility. We are grown-ups. Come on, when else will we get our maturity? Let's grab the opportunities, grab the responsibilities. Whatever needs to be done around us, let's do it. That's what we are talking of, Adhikamumagi. That's our greatness. That's what our valor shows, that we can become the greatest if and only if we assume overall responsibility, right? Infinitely overall responsibility, in fact. Unbounded, limitless, as I said. So that's the third one. We said that we became the foremost akara. We became the leader Adhipan. And third, we became the greatest Adhikam. Now we say the most important thing, ahamagi. Ahamagi. Aham again is a Sanskrit word, as many of you are familiar with. And agi, of course, transforming into, evolving into, becoming and eventually being what we were always, what we are currently, and what we will be forever. Yes, the inner self. Aham. Aham Brahmasmi. Inner self of one and all, which I frequently referred to as ourself in the previous episode. We have all thoroughly enjoyed playing so many role-play games as kids and perhaps even as adults for childish fun. Similarly, Muruga takes on various temporary forms such as an old man, Kelavanukku haro-harā, Kelavanukku haro-harā, Kelavanukku haro-harā, to trick Valli. Our desires need to be tricked, but fully conscious of his true self, and to trick our desire, who helps? Our intelligence in the form of Ganesha, who takes on the form of an elephant to scare our desire to go to its ultimate. That is our valor, keenly perceptive valor of Muruga. That's where Valli belongs, desire belongs. But fully conscious of his true self all the time. Analogously, we take on many temporary false identities, not only while playing recognized role-play games. Yeah, we used to play role-play games as children. We continue to play many role-play games. But we continue to take on many temporary false identities, not only while playing those recognized role-play games, but even more commonly in our day-to-day life too. As someone's child, someone's spouse, someone's parent, someone's protege, someone's teacher, someone's boss, etc. But even as we fulfill all those duties and obligations to the best of our abilities and talents and skills and training, we ought to be always aware of our true self, aham, and nature, Brahman, as the Atman alias Brahman, periodically reminding ourselves of the 4 Vedic Mahavakyas, Prajnanam Brahma, Tattvamasi, I am Atma Brahma, Aham Brahmasmi. Prajnanam Brahma, our consciousness is the ultimate, all-pervading Brahman. Tattvamasi, that thou art. You are, I am, we all are. Tattvam asi. What's written on top of the Sabarimala shrine also. Next. I am Atma Brahma. This Atma is Brahman. Finally, the student wakes up after all these teachings and says, Aham Brahmasmi. I am Brahman. Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa used to often illustrate this, what we are talking about here, as Ahamagi. Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa always used many wonderful, simpleton parables in order to make us understand these things very clearly and impress it very deeply into us so that it will come into our experience rather than remain just as a intellectual knowledge. So Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa illustrated this particular thing of Aham with how a dutiful babysitter takes care of someone else's baby. That's what a babysitter does, right? Take care of somebody else's baby for money, right? On a day-to-day or a week-to-week basis. But how does this dutiful babysitter take care of someone else's baby? Because there are many non-dutiful babysitters also, and many of them have fallen into various corrupt ways, unfortunately, for the babies and their parents. But how would a dutiful babysitter do it? Almost as if it's her own baby, or if it's a male babysitter, very rare, his own baby. So a dutiful babysitter takes care of someone else's baby as his or her own, but always aware of the truth that it is not his or her own baby, but will still look after it as his or her own baby during the time of babysitting. That's while on duty, right? Our relationship with the entire world ought to be like that. I'm a mother to the entire universe. I'm taking care of it as if I'm a trustee. Precisely possibly in Bengali, but precisely the word that was used by Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. Coming back, our keenly perceptive valor, Muruga. I keep referring to keenly perceptive valor. Always you should remember that it is Muruga. For those of you who are more into the embodied forms of God and bhakti and things like that, you think of it as a person separately. But even for you, I always tell you, Jnana Marga is what you eventually will go to. So you might as well recognize an even more deeper connection with that somebody called Muruga, that he is nothing but our own valor, our own keenly perceptive valor with 18 eyes, right? So our valor selflessly serves the truly needy all around us, just like that babysitter of the entire universe. Serves the truly needy all around us in its truest form of ourself. Yes? That's what the even more ancient mystic saint poet Sri aruna-giri-nāthar, yes, because Sri aruna-giri-nāthar, remember, lived much before Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, though much after Adi Shankaracharya. I will come to that later. But yes, the Aruna-giri refers to here, what does he refer to? The phrase that we were discussing? Ahamagi, yes. Right? The same thing is what Ramakrishna Paramahamsa is referring to. Yes, Aruna-giri occurred almost half a millennia prior to Ramakrishna. So let's go to the next one, the fifth phrase in this song, the second line of the first stanza. Ayanana Vagi. Again, Agi is there. transforming into, evolving into, becoming, and eventually being. That is agi. Keep that aside. Yenav means like. But what is most important here? The first word of the phrase, ayan. Ayan. What? The Vishuddhi, Brahma, creativity. That is ayan, another name for Brahma, the creator. But what is it really? Our creativity, right? So transforming into or becoming our own creativity, symbolized by we the creator, Brahma. Our keenly perceptive valor, Muruga, once questioned our creativity, Brahma, about its knowledge of the source as well as ultimate truth. This is a once upon a time story about Muruga asking Brahma. But this is a daily moment to moment happening right now story that our valor at our Swadhisthana Chakra keeps on questioning our creativity about its knowledge of the source as well as ultimate truth. We claim to be creative and making so many new things, so-called inventions, discoveries, and so on. But our valor questions our creativity about its knowledge of the source as well as ultimate truth. Alankāra. What's the meaning of that? Asks our valor to our creativity. When our creativity expressed its ignorance, our valor locked it up. Our valor locked up our creativity in imprisonment, in a jail. Thus, our valor temporarily assumed, because once the creativity is locked, the job that the creativity was doing should not suffer, right? So if you imprison somebody or something, you have to take up their job also, my dear friend. Don't forget that, right? So our valor temporarily assumed the role of our creativity too. Of course, he has his own duty as valor, but in addition, the valor takes up the duty of our creativity too and took upon itself all creative duties and responsibilities. Adhikamumagi, right? That's what the equally dutiful and responsible saint poet, yes, aruna-giri-nāthar himself is so dutiful and responsible. He wasn't in the first half of his life. I've talked about what all happened, the gory details in one of the previous episodes of Vasanthi-mā's channel where she sang another tiru-pugazh. You can always go back and check that. But right now, I'm talking about the latter half of his life after the Muruga realization. What happened? He was as dutiful and responsible as our own keenly perceptive valor, as dutiful and responsible as Muruga, who did not only his job but also Brahma's job after locking him up, right? So that's what the equally dutiful and responsible saint poet aruna-giri-nāthar in this phrase refers to as ayanenavagi. Ayan Brahmava. Brahmava ite nane. Main Brahma ho gaya. Next, Hariyanavagi. Most people will tell me, if my Sanskrit friends and those who don't know Tamil, hey, this is not a, this is her. Well, we're talking of a rudimentary seed language, Tamil, ancient Tamil, where Hari becomes Ari. Sounds are similar, see? Chalta hai. That's communication, the power of communication there. And makes poetic beauty flow out like crazy in some of the ancient Sangam literature. Millennia ago, as well as a few centuries ago, like aruna-giri-nāthar's is about 600 years ago. So he already said ayanenavagi, pointing to our Vishuddhi chakra, that we are our creativity. Now we are talking about Hariyanavagi, pointing to our Anahata chakra. I don't know if I'm still in the frame, but Anahata chakra, which is the seat of Hari, Vishnu, Narayana, right? So already I am Brahma, I am the creativity, not the creator, but the creativity. I am what now? Before that, Agi means transforming into, evolving into, becoming, and eventually being. Our own self-stealing, because Hari means alankāram. Our own self-stealing. Stealing not some materialistic things. He stole butter, remember Krishna? What is butter? It's the very essence of milk, right? So the very essence of us is our soul, our atma, our self, which is what he stole, which he couldn't as Rama, Ekapatni Vrata. Now he is stealing everybody's soul. And symbolic of that in his childhood is the butter, right? So we are transforming into becoming and eventually being our own self-stealing, kidnapping and hijacking universal sustainability, symbolized by our own Stockholm syndrome like protective everythingness, Vishnu. You've heard of Stockholm syndrome? In many cases, what happens is there are groups, maybe even terrorist groups sometimes, but certain groups which have been brainwashed from their childhood to do certain nasty things, one of which is kidnapping. But after kidnapping, they treat the kidnapped person well because they don't have any enmity towards that person. Through the kidnapping, they want to achieve something else by blackmailing the government or somebody else to do something for them. Right? Now, because they're taking care of them well and they're probably talking about their philosophy, whatever brainwashing they got, they're transferring that brainwash to the kidnapped person, part of the hijacking, part of the self-stealing. So then slowly, day by day, month by month, however long that kidnapping lasts, the kidnapped person starts seeing the point of view of the kidnappers and their philosophy and starts sympathizing with them, empathizing with them. Even though they have been kidnapped, they have been wronged, they have been harmed, not harmed in a physical sense, but at least in an emotional sense, but still they see eye to eye with what those kidnappers are doing. That's called the Stockholm syndrome because it happened in Stockholm with some kidnappers. So it's named after that, but it has, of course, happens in other places as well. So what are we talking about here as Hariyanavagi? We are transforming into, evolving into, becoming, and eventually being that is Agi, our own self-stealing, kidnapping and hijacking universal sustainability, symbolized by our own Stockholm syndrome like protective everythingness, which is Vishnu, right? We think of him as a person, as an idol in some temple, which is actually a murti, vigraha or pratima. I'll talk about the difference between an idol or a statue and these beautiful Sanskrit concepts sometime later in terms of the consecration processes and other things and how very different they are from each other and how each one of these words have wonderful meaning. Maybe one of these massage and message talks that I would give on the other channel, the sister or brother channel or son channel rather of this Srimati Vasanthi Kumari Sampath channel, which is the Katham.in channel. But anyway, right now, everythingness, Vishnu, right? Yes, Vishnu was the original dad. Yes, some of you don't know this secret, right? Vishnu was the original dad of Kama. Of course, that is in the form of Manmata, that you know, who was then born as Pradyumna, the son of Krishna. Those stories you know, right? Or Narakasura also is another form of Kama. But here I'm not talking of those Kamas because I'm talking in the context of our own keenly perceptive valor, which is Murugan, right? So Vishnu is a father-in-law of Muruga because both of Muruga's spouses, Valli and Devyane, are originally Vishnu's daughters. Yes, Vishnu was the original dad of Kama, alias Valli, and Artha, alias Devyane. Of course, his wife is prosperity, Lakshmi, right? So obviously Artha is born. And Kama is born because of his stealing nature, Hari nature, right? So Kama alias Valli and Artha alias Devyane, two of the Purusharthas, are actually born out of our everythingness, that is Vishnu, our universal sustainability, right? What I called as the Stockholm syndrome, like protective everythingness. Yes, that Vishnu was the original dad of both Valli and Devyane, who were fostered by Nambirajan and Devendran. Again, the names are very significant. Valli is Kama, Devyane is Artha. Kama goes to be fostered by Nambirajan, foster father of Valli. And Devyane or Artha goes to be fostered by a foster father called Devendran. It's Indra, right? The king of the Devas. Indeed, our right royal trust, that's what Nambi Rajan means. Nambi, belief, faith, trust, Shraddha, right? Rajan, king, Raja, right? Nambi Rajan, the dad of Valli, so our right royal trust, it's just an embodiment of that. Indeed, our right royal trust, so important, is best to facilitate the growth of our righteously feminine desires, alias Kama or Valli. Who else can our desire grow with but our own trust, right? So these are, we're talking of righteous desires, that is, it can grow only with a royal trust. Similarly, our divine, resplendent, masculine, and aggressive right side, the passion, is required to raise CSR endowed, that is, corporate social responsibility endowed, and knowledge empowered businesses, alias Artha, alias Devyane or Devasena. Our valor, alias Muruga, which accepted as its dual spouses our powers of will, that is Valli, and action, that is Devyane, power of action, power of will, willpower and action power, right? Valli and Devyane. So, our valor, which accepted as its dual spouses our powers of will and action, has thus risen to fulfilling the responsibility of the sustainer too. He already took up the responsibility of our creativity. Now, by accepting the daughters of Vishnu, he is taking upon the duties of Vishnu as well, the responsibility of the sustainer, preserver, maintainer as well. That is what Vishnu is, right? So, stealing its thunder and limelight. Yes, Vishnu's or our sustaining capabilities, popular for its thunder and limelight, always being in the spotlight, right? But now, by marrying his daughters, Valli and Devyane, who are Artha and Kama, the two Purusharthas, Muruga, our own valor, keenly perceptive valor, that is, steals the thunder and limelight of the sustainer too. That's what the equally dutiful and responsible saint poet Aruna-giri, just like his role model Muruga, he is also dutiful and responsible. So that's what the equally dutiful and responsible saint poet aruna-giri-nāthar refers to here as Hariyanavagi. Hariyanavagi. I became Hari too. Finally, or rather the third in the same line of four, Harananavagi. Again, my Sanskrit friends would say Haran, Hara, that starts with Ha. Yes, my dear friend, Ha is A in Tamil. That's fine, it's acceptable. So instead of Harananavagi, we say Arananavagi. So both of them refer to Shiva, that which is not. Hara, the father of Muruga, right? So Haranenavagi, Agi again transforming into, morphing into, evolving into, entirely becoming and eventually being one with what? Haran, our own self-destructive nothingness at the Sahasrara. Symbolized by that which is not Shiva. Marching forward to scene 2 of the episode of our valor imprisoning our creativity. When I said Ayananavaga, I told about becoming our own creativity, Brahma. I told a part of the story where Muruga imprisoned Brahma, right? That is our valor imprisoned our creativity. Now let's march forward to the scene 2 of the episode of our valor imprisoning our creativity and taking over its functionality, of course, right? So valor had to become creativity as well. So our valor's immediate and only progenitor is our own nothingness at our Sahasrara, right? Because he's born out of the third eye of Shiva as a spark, right? So though he was mothered, fosterly mothered by so many, including Parvati, the Kritika Pengal, Gangai and Saravana Poigai and the lotuses, etc., treated everyone as his mother, but still the only progenitor was Shiva, our own nothingness, right? So when something is considered to be wrong in the views of the public, even though the administration might know that it's not wrong, just to clear the things for the public, it might have to go through an investigation. Very similar to how Sita was sent out for Vanavasa because of a dhobi talking ill about her stay at Ashokavana of Ravana, though she had done Agni Pariksha, etc. Okay, that's Uttara Ramayana. We'll talk about it probably another day, maybe closer to Ramanavami, when Vasanthi-mā has promised to sing some wonderful songs of Rama. Right now, we are talking of scene 2 of the episode of our valor imprisoning our creativity and taking over its functionality. So our valor's immediate and only progenitor is our own nothingness. Hence, our nothingness takes upon itself the responsibility to question our highly perceptive valor about what superficially seems to be an unacceptable act of a military coup, albeit being bloodless, over our elderly, honorable, and respectable creativity. Right? So, this is a coup that the valor has done over creativity, which is an elderly embodiment, honorable and respectable. So everybody else sees this as a crime. Why creativity has gotten into this kind of status because of valor? Is it a military coup? It was bloodless, but still, it's a coup is a coup, right? So, superficially it seems to be unacceptable. So, though nothingness knows all about it, he takes upon himself, or our nothingness takes upon itself, the responsibility to question. Question who? Our own highly perceptive valor about what superficially seems to be an unacceptable act of a military coup, albeit being bloodless, over our elderly, honorable, and respectable creativity. So, knowledge and wisdom, my dear friends, in our culture of Prashnatraya, where the 3 most important scriptures in Sanatana Dharma, the Upanishads, forming the Vedanta, the end of the Vedas, the Brahma Sutras of Maharishi Vedavyasa, the crisp and very succinct statements of truth, or the sutras, and this is about Brahman itself, so it's Brahma Sutras. And then thirdly, the Bhagavad Gita. There are, of course, many Gitas. Let's talk about the Srimad Bhagavad Gita. But whichever Gita you take up, and whichever sutra you take up, especially the Brahma Sutra, and whichever Upanishad you take up, whether the minor ones, about 108, or the major ones, 12 of them, every one of them involves questioning, inquiring, interrogating the Maharishi, the seer, by those who are seekers like you and me. We have to question. Only then we can get to the truth. Questioning is so very important, critical in fact. So knowledge and wisdom progress if and only if there's genuine internal inquiry. It's not only questioning somebody else. That's how we start. But the questioning eventually has to move internally and keep on questioning what you think, what you do, what you speak, and get the right answers. And keep on refining and evolving. That's how knowledge and wisdom grows and you evolve. So knowledge and wisdom progress only through genuine internal inquiry and balanced interrogation. The interrogation has to be balanced. You don't just pounce upon something just for the heck of that. That's also happening. People go to the other extreme of putting somebody down and showing off their own oratory skills or logical debating skills, and just want to rush for a debate like the news hour debates on most of the news channels that we have today, right? No, we're not talking of that kind of questioning or inquiry or interrogation. This has to be a balanced interrogation, a genuine internal inquiry, more internal than external. So our valor thus poses a counter query to our nothingness. Our nothingness asked, why did you do this? To our valor. Why did you arrest creativity, imprison it, and take upon its duties, right? So, our keenly perceptive valor poses a counter query to our nothingness. It's, what does it say? Forget about creativity's ignorance for a while. At least do you, O nothingness, know what is the meaning of the ultimate truth? Feigning ignorance, Shiva, the innocent Bholenath, feigning ignorance, to why? To showcase the outstanding perceptivity of our 18-eyed valor, his own son, right? Our nothingness demands that its son, our valor, reveal whatever it knows which our creativity doesn't. You are, oh valor, you arrested creativity because creativity didn't know the meaning of Om. Now you tell me the meaning of Om. Because unless you know it, you don't have the authority to arrest somebody else who doesn't know it. But the valor's argument was that creativity, for any of its creation, requires knowledge. And the ultimate knowledge is the meaning of Om. So if you don't know the meaning of Om, you don't deserve to be the creator or creativity, right? So our valor, however, values wisdom as invaluable and to be shared only through traditional processes of the Guru-Shishya Parampara. This requires our nothingness, which is now a student, right, to seat itself in a humbly receptive position as a student. Because unless you are humble and receptive, keenly attentive, conscious, alert, you cannot utilize the knowledge which flows, right? So this requires our nothingness to seat itself in a humbly receptive position as a student, which our nothingness gracefully accepts. Bholenath. So what? I've become a student of my own child. The child is the father of man. That's Swami Malai, Swaminatha, Muruga, becoming the guru for his own father. our valor becoming the guru of our nothingness. So nothingness gracefully accepts despite being the parent of our valor. Seated thus in an elevated Guruji's position, maybe on the shoulder of Shiva, let's say, that is the shoulder of our own nothingness, our valor is sitting. Seated thus in an elevated Guruji's position. Actually, the Guruji's position is 2 chakras away from the Sahasrara. Yes, there are chakras above the Sahasrara also. The first one is the Matru-Pitru chakra of the Grahas or Navagrahas. And then beyond them, beyond the Nagas of Rahu, Ketu, Vasuki, Adi Ananta Shesha, Takshaka, etc., is the ultimate chakra of the Guru. That is the 9th of the elevated chakras, major elevated chakras, to beyond the Sahasrara. So, though I was talking of bodily sense sitting on the shoulder of Shiva, in reality, it's all happening inside you, inside me. And where is this? About a feet or two above our head, above the Sahasrara chakra. And that location is the Guru chakra, where our valor shoots up from the Swadhisthana at the solar plexus below the navel, 2 inches below the navel, to 2 feet above the head, right? See how this just becoming a guru to nothingness, what it can do to you, right? Seated thus in an elevated Guruji's position, our keenly perceptive valor, raising the Kundalini Shakti, the snake-like Kundalini Shakti, from its home base position of the Swadhisthana to a couple of levels above our nothingness's position at the Sahasrara, reveals the supreme truth, the meaning of akara, ukara, makara, alankāra, and the gaps between the 2 alankāras as well. The consummate truth and the paramount truth. Yes, this is no ordinary truth that don't tell lies, tell the truth. That kind of things which parents and teachers impose on the children. No, we are not talking of that. Here we are talking of the reality, the supreme truth, the consummate truth, the paramount truth of the Mandukya Upanishad. That's what the equally elevated and wise saint poet aruna-giri-nāthar refers to here as haranenavagi. By becoming the guru of our own nothingness, indeed, our valor, keenly perceptive valor, transformed into our own nothingness as well. He already transformed into our creativity. He already transformed into our sustainability. Now he transforms into our nothingness as well. And all 3 of these, Ayanenavagi, Hariyanavagi, and Haranenavagi, are combined in the 4th one by saying, not just combined, but going even beyond that, because aruna-giri-nāthar now says, our may lie above them also. Our perception endowed valor doesn't merely transform into, morph into, evolve into, entirely become, and eventually be one with, but already was, currently is, and will always be Agi, an entity transcending even beyond the constructive, protective, and destructive trinity of the Trimurtis of Ayan, Hari, and Haran, referring to our indecipherable dark energy of Kali, who is our male eye. You've seen Kali dancing over Shiva lying down almost like a corpse. Our male eye. She is Kali standing over Shiva, who is already over Brahma and Vishnu. So, referring to our indecipherable dark energy, which scientists are breaking their heads over, the best of the scientists around the world are researching on the physics of dark energy. Dark matter itself is not yet learned yet, the black holes. Now, what the black holes will disintegrate into, the all-absorbing black holes will disintegrate into, is the dark energy. So, which is our melai, beyond Brahma, Vishnu and Hari, beyond our creativity, sustainability and destructivity. So Kali, which spontaneously consumes even the all-absorbing black hole of our own nothingness and the entire space-time canvas of Mahakala in Mahapralaya. Hence, Sri Aruna-giri-nāthar, through this phrase, our melai, indicates that his Ishta Devata, our keenly perceptive and super energetic valor, endowed with the veil of the mother, Muruga, is even beyond his mommy, Kali. Yes, Muruga is even beyond his mommy, Kali. Our keenly perceptive valor is even beyond our dark energy. Yes, our channel viewers and Katham channel viewers are familiar with the Tamil proverb, Thai ettadi paindal, kutti 16 adi payum, told with respect to a singa kutti or puli kutti, but same thing is valid with respect to Kali and Muruga also. In this context, one needs to recount another very interesting story. It will take some time, but worth it, related to this anyway. So I have a reason to say it, to tell you this story. Storytelling time. Story time, boys, girls. Okay, right. I need to recount the Kali Upasak Sambanthandan, who was a black beastie betanoyer of Sri Aruna-giri-nāthar. You know betanoyer? Sworn enemy. Not sworn as an enemy by Aruna-giri-nāthar, but Sambanthandan himself swears himself as an enemy of Aruna-giri-nāthar. I am considered as a friend of the friendless, one who has no enemies at all. So I can see what kind of state Aruna-giri-nāthar would be, because he would have had no enemies at all as well. But somebody comes forth just to showcase Aruna-giri-nāthar's greatness. A courier boy, a postman called Sambanthandan, was a black beastie betanoyer of Aruna-giri. Jealous of the rising popularity of Aruna-giri-nāthar, Sambanthandan challenged him to bring forth the divine vision of his Ishta Devata, Muruga, for one and all to witness. He told, I will show my Kali to the king and to his royal court. Now you come and show your Ishta Devata, you are saying it's Muruga. Show Muruga to the king and to the royal courtiers and courtesans. So allow me the freedom, my dear friends, to digress a little bit to reveal the interesting story in some detail. Sri Aruna-giri-nāthar had just then returned from a long series of pilgrimages throughout South and North Bharat. Yes, he is known to have visited at least Haridwar, if not many other places in North India as well as Sri Lanka, especially southern Sri Lanka, not only the Jaffna area, but going from Jaffna all the way to southern Sri Lanka, the wonderful temples in the eastern province, I believe. Temples are, of course, consecrated spaces, essentially, where prana pratishta has been done. So, in fact, Aruna-giri-nāthar was literally twice born, actually thrice born, at Tiruvannamalai, we call Brahmins as twice born when they change their sacred thread, right? Or first wear it for the first time, right? Now here we're talking of somebody who is twice born, actually thrice born, at Tiruvannamalai. All three births were at Tiruvannamalai. As he was first born to a courtesan, Muttammai there, saved by her valor for a second life from a suicide attempt. You know why I've talked about this in the context of another tiru-pugazh of Vasanthi-mā. So he was trying to jump off the temple tower from a suicide attempt while jumping off the holy place's main temple tower or gopuram, which he now adorns, in fact, in his third birth as a parrot. So he was born to Muttammai as a regular baby like you and me. And then he tried to commit suicide falling off such a tall tower and he was saved. So it's a new lease of life for him. So it's like a new birth, second birth. And then he became a parrot. What cock and bull story is this? Well, my dear friends, there's a very, very deep technology. Goodu vittu gooduppayirudu. So listen on to this story if that interests you, right? So, in fact, the third birth as a parrot, and he still lives as a parrot on top of that gopuram, giving it the name of the Kili Gopuram, right? So Tiruvannamalai was then, at that time, 600 years ago, under the rule of Prabhuda Devaraya, a true spiritual seeker in our rich tradition of Sanatana Dharma, but also unfortunately a friend of Sambantandan, the black beastie guy, who was both arrogant and boastful about his tantric learning. Tantra is an amazing technology, but like all technologies, it's a double-edged sword. You can use it or misuse it. And unfortunately, many people for a period of time misused it, and therefore it's not those tantrics which got a bad name, but Tantra itself got a bad name. That's unfortunate, right? The technology should not be blamed. Alfred Nobel instituted the Nobel Peace Prize after inventing dynamite, right? And it's used for so many useful purposes of construction, etc. Right? So, the knife could be used for cooking or for killing. That doesn't mean the knife is bad. The wielder of the knife, his intentions or her intentions, that's what matters, right? But here, this tantric learning had gone to the head of this tantric, and he was too boastful, arrogant, and of course beastie. Okay? About his own learning and spiritual attainments, but even that is not good. Sri Aruna-giri-nāthar, dignity is fine, but there's a thin line between being dignified and being arrogant, right? That's what we're talking about. He had crossed the line. Sambantandan. Sri Aruna-giri-nāthar visited over 300 consecrated spots of our own nothingness, our valor, our everythingness, our energy, and those secularly dedicated to many other deities, representing all our other aspects too. This is true secular nature that Sanatana Dharma is all about. So every consecrated spot had a unique history of its own, impressed by the sanctity, the power, and importance of these prana pratishtas. Sri Aruna-giri-nāthar composed songs on many of our characteristics. Yes, our characteristics are what the deities are, right? But mostly focused on our keenly-perceptive valor. You know who it is. Bringing forth all its intricate and unique subtleties. While referring to the history of a consecrated spot, we often find special mention being made about Sri Aruna-giri-nāthar's visit there, suggesting most appropriately the fact that his mere visit has brought sanctity and sacredness to even the already consecrated spot. For, in the very first place, the spot had become consecrated only because another great spiritually realized Jivan Mukta like Aruna-giri-nāthar had done prana pratishtas there sometime back in history, right? Yes, it's indeed humanity which has continually breathed life. Prana pratishta is the very, very scientific, technological term that is used for this, the consecration process. Prana is the life force, the life energy, which is breathed into the so-called idol or statue to convert it into a pratima or a murti or a vigraha, right? Yes, it's indeed humanity which has continually breathed life into divinity rather than God creating man. This is the Western version of the story. To cut a long story short, after such an extensive pilgrimage to hundreds of temples in north, south of Bharat and the Akhanda Bharat involving Sri Lanka as well, Sri Aruna-giri-nāthar returned to his hometown, Tiruvannamalai, to lead a quiet life of devotion. Like I'm doing in this COVID period, having gone to 46 different countries and almost every state of India, so many pilgrimage places, wonderful pilgrimage places in so many parts of India and Buddhist shrines, major parts of Asia, etc. Now I'm leading a cool, quiet life of devotion. But Aruna-giri-nāthar was disturbed from that state by Samvantandan, of course. The king Prabhuda Devaraya honored him. Honored whom? Not Samvantandan. He was his friend anyway. But this Aruna-giri-nāthar had returned after a long pilgrimage. He had written so many poems. It had become famous. Some other person who challenged him, who kept on challenging others as well, and whoever couldn't tell the meanings of his songs, the ears were chopped off. But Aruna-giri-nāthar was the first person who could interpret all of his songs as well as recite some songs which that person could not interpret, and therefore that person became a disciple of Aruna-giri-nāthar and in fact wrote discourses or explanations of the songs written by Aruna-giri-nāthar himself. So all of these, it's called the Kandar Andadi, I think, right? So this kind of popularity and great performances by Aruna-giri-nāthar obviously would go into somebody else's head, right? So but nonetheless, the king was a great man and he honored Aruna-giri-nāthar, granted him the privileged status of the poet of the royal court, right? And Samvantandan wanted to please his friend Prabhuda Devaraya. So he persuaded the king to invite Sri Aruna-giri-nāthar to a contest in which he, that is Samvantandan, and Sri Aruna-giri-nāthar should each undertake to manifest their Ishta Devata before the king and his open royal court. It was stressed that he who failed in the attempt should retire from his domain. So Sri Aruna-giri-nāthar was prepared for the proposal, always ready to take up challenge like his own Ishta Devata, who was valor personified. So Sri Aruna-giri-nāthar, keenly perceptive himself as well, was and knowing the tantric technologies as well, not only the siddha and yoga but the tantra as well, Aruna-giri-nāthar was prepared for the proposal, the contest, the competition, recognizing that our keenly perceptive valor would yield to his mystically devoted invocations. He would recite his tiru-pugazh, his skandhar alankāram, etc. And he expected his own valor, in fact anticipated or rather knew that his valor would be invoked through them, and that it would bless Devaraya, the king, with its embodied darshan as Muruga. So Samvantandan first undertook to manifest his personal deity, our all-subsuming dark energy, Kali, and his proceedings were with great ritualistic pomp and ceremony, which is characteristic of Tantra. The majestic vision of Kali was bewilderingly presented before one and all, gathered there just for a fraction of a second that they could bear it without being crushed to death by its sheer, utter darkness and energetics. Very scary. But for such a short time that Kali vanished, and just like the Bhavadarini who kept giving darshans to Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, who could bear the darkness of dark energy, but the ordinary people, including the seekers like the king, were not able to do that. So compassionately, Mother Kali disappeared, giving a glimpse of herself for a second. Next, it was the turn of the other competitor, other person in the competition. So Sri Aruna-giri-nāthar started singing his own compositions, namely the glorious praises of tiru-pugazh, appealing to our keenly perceptive valor with utter devotion, pleading to provide its embodied darshan as Muruga, and thus raising his deeply mystical invocations to a crescendo. But Kali is the mother of Muruga. She converted him into a small child and put him on her lap and wouldn't let him go, because she wanted her devotee Sam-vat-sarā to win the competition. And Muruga loved being on the lap of his mommy, and valor was captivated by dark energy. So Muruga is not coming, and Aruna-giri-nāthar is going on and on, tiru-pugazh after tiru-pugazh. Finally, our bliss started dancing. It was our bliss. I told you about it in a previous episode. Yes, the peacock, the vehicle, the transporter of our own valor, is our own bliss. Symbolized, of course, embodied as peacock, for its handsomeness, for its beauty, and for its great dance skills. Right? So, as Aruna-giri-nāthar's invocations rose to a crescendo, undoubtedly Muruga appeared with our own bliss, taking on the form of his peacock. Because even though Kali was cuddling Muruga, once the peacock started dancing, Muruga jumped out of her lap onto the peacock, and he was right there. So Muruga appeared with our own bliss, the son of Kali, but the effect was entirely opposite. Kali's was dark energy, utterly dark, very difficult to bear. Muruga's utter brightness, again very difficult to bear. So Muruga appeared with our own bliss, taking on the form of his peacock through one of the pillars of the grand royal stage, like how Narasimha appeared, right, much later. Or Mandapam, as we call it, to bless Sri Aruna-giri-nāthar. The brilliance of the manifestation of our keenly perceptive valor was so bright that it rivaled the luminosity of hundreds of suns, and the royal subjects were thus unable to behold this unprecedented spectacle with their ordinary eyes. They tried to cover and close it, but it was too late, too little, too late. In fact, it turned out to be a large-scale disaster, as everybody in the visual vicinity actually lost their eyesight, and the blind community, of course, included the poor king, Prabhupada and his ministers. The only person who escaped, of course, was the one who created all of this nonsense, Sam-vat-sarā. Yielding to the wily recommendations of Sam-vat-sarā and succumbing to his continually opportunistic pressures, the king requested Sri Aruna-giri-nāthar to bring the legendary Parijata flowers. You're familiar with Satyabhama's story of the Parijata flowers, how she asked Krishna to bring it from Indraloka, right? Devaloka. Now it's the same thing. So Sambandhandan told the king that your blindness, the blindness of the ministers, the blindness of all your people, the citizens of this country, the subjects of your kingdom, can be removed and they can see once again if and only if the medicinal values of the Parijata flower are accessed. So the king, after so much of opportunistic pressure from Sambandhandan, agreed to that, and he requested Sri Aruna-giri-nāthar to bring the legendary Parijata flowers in order to restore everyone's 20 by 20 eyesight, even if they had already myopia or hypermetropia. Those days there were no glasses, but now we can get back with the Parijata 20/20 eyesight, irrespective of the age. So Sri Aruna-giri-nāthar used some of his Ashta Siddhi, or what is called as the eightfold powers, manifesting a technique called, as I said earlier, Goodu Vittu Goodu Payirudhu, utilized a millennium or more earlier by Sri Adi Shankaracharya to get into a married man's body to understand what copulation and giving birth to was all about, so that he could win over an argument or a debate with the wife of a great debater of the ritualistic kind. So there was a danger that the body of the person that he had entered, the king, and then was ruling, and the minister got suspicious and was about to burn up the original body of Shankaracharya, but by then the disciples got alert, as they were already alerted by Shankaracharya. But this kind of care was not undertaken by Aruna-giri-nāthar, unfortunately. And this is something similar to Arjuna knowing how to get into a Chakravyuha as well as out. But he had told Subhadra only up to that part when she was pregnant about getting in, not about getting out. And Abhimanyu as a fetus had heard that, and therefore during the Mahabharata war, the Kauravas killed Abhimanyu, who had entered into their Chakravyuha that they had set up for him while having sent his dad Arjuna away. Right? So this Goodu Vittu Goodu Payirudhu has been there for quite some time. It's a well-known technology that many tantrics can actually perform. And Adi Shankaracharya had demonstrated that amazingly, and he could come out of it too. So in order to fetch the Parijata flowers, Sri Aruna-giri-nāthar did the same thing which Shankaracharya had done 1,000 years earlier. 1,000 or more years earlier. And so Aruna-giri-nāthar entered the body. He needed to find somebody who had died just then, just like an elephant who had died just then, the head of that was given to Ganesha. Similarly, the king who had died just then, that is the body that Shankaracharya had entered. Now, as Aruna-giri-nāthar saw around, he saw that a parrot died at that point of time. So it's a freshly dead body. So therefore, it's still possible to enter it. There's only up to a certain duration that even a great tantric can enter into somebody else's dead body. If the dead body has been dead for much longer than that, then even with the best of the tantric practices, one cannot enter that dead body. So this was a fresh dead body of the parrot. So Aruna-giri-nāthar saw that, and happened to have, of course, died naturally just then. So while the true self of Sri Aruna-giri-nāthar's Atma occupied and enlivened the parrot's body, he left his original human body secretly hidden. He knew Sambandhandan will be up to something on this. So he hid his original human body secretly in the temple tower. The same temple tower which today is called Kili-Gopuram. We'll see why. So where he had earlier spotted the dead parrot. So same place, he put his dead body, so that it's like a dead body now, because even though he is alive in the parrot's body, not in his own body, right? Not his current body. So shrewdly anticipating and recognizing this status, the Kali Upasak Sammantandan searched for, discovered, and burnt Sri Aruna-giri-Nāthar's human body to ashes, as one would cremate any other dead body for that matter. Saying, of course, nobody else was there. Or, by the way, there were no eyewitnesses. Why? If you can guess why there were no eyewitnesses for what Sammantandan did to the dead body of Aruna-giri-Nāthar? Well, I know some of you would have got it. Remember, everyone around had become blind. So how can anybody be an eyewitness? Thanks to the blinding brilliance of our own keenly-perceptive valor, the 18-eyed one. So on his return, with the parijata flowers held in his parrot beak, beautiful parrot beak, I had the opportunity of a parrot coming and sitting on my shoulders a few days after my father's death. It's an amazing sight, and he had had the vision of Muruga as well. Amazing. So held in his parrot beak, the parijata flowers, Aruna-giri-Nāthar flew back, so that he could enter back his own human body. But obviously he couldn't find his original human body. It had already been burnt, right? Cremated by Sammantandan. So all that is there right now is the way it is. All that is there right now is the way it is. It cannot be in any other way. This moment is inevitable. To be in the present moment is not even an option. People keep saying, be in the present, be in the present. Do you have any other option? No. To be in the present is not even an option. It's the only possibility. To accept the present as it is also not an option. Not only do you have to be in the present, but you have to accept it as it is. No choice. The future, you have a million choices. You can have it the way you want. You can design it. But the current instant, the moment, it's as it is. And you have no option but to accept it as it is. But to do so joyfully, that is accepting it as it is, joyfully or grudgingly, is an option. To be in the present moment consciously or accidentally are definitely wide open options. Sri Aruna-giri-Nāthar chose to be in the present moment consciously, with full awareness, rather than accidentally. He accepted his parrot body as it is, joyously, not grudgingly, or sadly, or angrily. What's the point? You're just troubling yourself, that's all. So accept it joyously, whatever it is right now, the moment in your lives. Same thing Aruna-giri-Nāthar did. He had lost his human body. What can be worse than that? People worry about losing an eye or a nose or a hand or a leg or the mind, getting all kinds of psychiatric illness, etc. Worry about that. Here's a person who's lost his entire human body and he's got a parrot body, and still he's accepting it joyously, because that's the choice you make, to accept it joyously or grudgingly, right? What happens when you make the choice to be in the present moment consciously and accept things as they are joyously? Just like Aruna-giri-Nāthar did, so that he could transform the law of karma to the game of Leela. That's what you and I can also do, my friend. If only we accept things as they are right now, we can convert What is the law of karma? Action, reaction to the game of Leela. And game is so much more fun to play, whether you win or lose, right? It's just for the fun of playing it. Give your all out to it, total involvement. Try to win, but even if you lose, you have enjoyed playing the game. That's being sportive, right? Right. So thus, undoubtedly, rightfully, clearly, and crisply recognizing that the vanishing human body, nor its acquired and accumulated mind and intellect, were all never himself in the very first place. So why worry? And the fact that all these tools, the BMI toolkit, disappeared is also entirely by the grace of our keenly perceptive valor for some specific globally significant endeavors. Because not even a leaf flutters without the permission of our grace. So, what to speak of such a major happening? It has to have some implication, which is always for the universal good in the long run. We don't realize that in the short term because our perceptions are too narrow. Like the horse with those things on either side so that it can see only ahead where it has to go, cannot see left or right for distractions, right? Too focused. So perceptive valor for some specific globally significant endeavor, that's what aruna-giri-nāthar recognized. So recognizing these truths, Sri Aruna-giri-nāthar sang out of his beautiful parrot body's sweet voice. He was doing it with human body, now he does it with a parrot body. So what? So Aruna-giri-nāthar sang out of his beautiful parrot body's sweet voice about the great warrior-like inner experience of the self, known in Tamil as the skandhar anubhuti, and perching himself forever right on top of one of the 8 massive Arunachaleshwara temple towers. Yes, usually all temples have 4 gopurams, north, east, west and south, but on each one of these sides, the Arunachaleshwara temple of Tiruvannamalai has 2 gopurams, one big one and one small one. So one of those 8 is the Kili Gopuram, the tower on which Aruna-giri-nāthar is frozen in time, deified as a pratima. Till date, there's still a still murti. There is still a still murti, like a still photo, right? There's a still murti, vigraha or pratima of a parrot in one, or rather on one of the stupas, the Kili Gopuram, as a testament to history. Don't forget to have its darshan if you happen to visit Tiruvannamalai. And for those of you who have already visited it, the next time. Because there are many who have visited it so many times, myself umpteen times, for the spiritually exhilarating Girivalams, the 16-kilometer walk around the hill, which is considered as the Agni-linga. Spiritually exhilarating indeed, those Girivalams. And meditative explorations of the Sheshadri and Ramana Maharishi's ashrams and hilltop caves, amongst many other attractions in this city, so bountifully blessed by Unnamullai Amman, the name of the power of nothingness in that temple. And of course, the Agni Panchabhuta Sthala that the entire mountain is, not only the temple at its foothills. In fact, many people don't even want to walk up the hill because it is Shiva. But once you recognize it as our own nothingness, then obviously that's the only place to walk on, which I do to get onto Ramana Maharishi's meditative caves and meditate for a while over there whenever I get the opportunity. I hope, Vasanthi-mā, would someday sing for us the Skandhar Anubhuti. I've already talked to her. She has agreed, so I'm sure she will. In fact, it's a short poem of 51 quatrains. Quatrains meaning 4 phrases. As an essence of Sri Aruna-giri-nāthar's mystical experiences, the one he sang as a parrot, as I just told you. So, those Skandhar Anubhuti and Skandhar alankāram are smaller poems in simpler Tamil. They haven't been as popular as tiru-pugazh themselves, so I would really request Vasanthi-mā to sing them for us as soon as possible so that we can popularize them as well. So thanks for letting me indulge with this storytelling. I have to get back to business. The next phrase in the current song is agaram-um, being all the things in this world. In Sanskrit, we call this physical world as iha, and the metaphysical one beyond this world as para, referred to in the very next phrase by Aruna-giri. Right? Here he has said agaram-um, the next phrase he says yevaigalum. So agaram-um is being all things in this world. Yevaigalum is being whatever things are in whichever world. Okay? It is the complementary set. You see? A complement intersection A is the universal set. Right? So any set A along with its complement, that means anything other than that, will become the universal set. So that is the everythingness. So that's what we mean by agaram-um, yevaigalum, being all the things in this world and whatever things are in whichever world. And inimayum, being the embodiment of sweetness, diabetically sweet, is our keenly perceptive valor. Varuvone, our keenly perceptive valor which comes to us. So sweet. Irunila-meedil, in this vast world of 14 dimensions, corresponding to the 2 sets of 7 each, 7 higher or rather evolved chakras, and the 7 lower or rather devolved chakras below the Muladhara. Whatever state each of us seekers might be in, evolved or devolved, Sri Aruna-giri-nāthar seeks our keenly perceptive valor's grace for all of us by saying Irunila-meedil. Iru means 2 sets of 7 each. Irunila-meedil, whatever state, either the evolved states or the devolved states. Eliyanum vaļa, so that this humble and simpleton self may also survive. Those who are devolved, those in the lower set, below the Muladhara, so that they also can survive. Eliyanum vaļa. Yenadu munnodi varavenum. Yenadu mun odi varavenum is one way of singing it. Yenadu munnodi varavenum is the second way of singing it. Very different meanings. So let's first look at Yenadu mun odi varavenum. Our valor must come running towards us. In fact, appearing instantaneously, whenever required. This is a wonderful boon to ask, right? So many times in these TV serials, they show the deities coming in and asking somebody who's doing a penance, what boon do you want? And the person says this and that and many complications to it. Well, ask that the deity appears to you with a boon every time you want it, right? So then you have it as an open account, a blank check, right? So that's exactly what he's talking about here. Yenadu mun odi varavenum. Our keenly perceptive valor must come running towards us, in fact, appearing instantaneously whenever required. But an alternative way of looking at this is to join mun and odi into munnodi, which refers to the long and powerful siddhar lineage, not just ancestors in a biological sense, but our guru, right? The guru parampara, the siddhar lineage amongst the siddhars, the great siddha that aruna-giri-nāthar himself was. Preceding Sri aruna-giri-nāthar, and that's what is called munnodi, the lineage, the ancestry in an academic sense, in a siddha sense, and requests for their vision. It's not only does aruna-giri-nāthar want to see Muruga whenever he wants to see all the other great devotees of Muruga before him in the same sense, because he had taken all the way back to Tirunjana Sambandhar as his Manasika Guru. We'll see that later. The next phrase is Mahapati-yagi. Again, Agi is coming. That means transforming, becoming, being, etc. What? Mahapati. The great Pati. The great husband, the great Lord. Being the Murti, Vigraha, Pratima, deity, presiding over all sacrificial rites or activities of the physical, emotional, and intellectual planes. Marum Valari, being Indra, alias Valaripu, enemy of Valasura, our lethargically lazy inertia. He who killed Valasura is Valaripu. Ripu. You rip him off. The English word rip comes from that. So Maruvum here in Maruvum Valari, here Maruvum, what does it refer to? It refers to change. Change, not the money exchange, but the change. Maruvum, marurd, we say, right? Maruvum refers to change being the only constant in our exteriority. Today I look like this, tomorrow I might look like that. Some very different from this, right? Our body keeps on changing. So many cells die, so many new cells keep coming. Our mind keeps changing with the emotions continually. The intellect keeps changing with its own thoughts. So the only constant in our exteriority is change. Maruvum. And our passionately aggressive and sensual rajasic gunas, being the cause of all dynamic change, are led by an embodiment called Indra. An alternate meaning of Maruvum Valari is the ever-changing emotive perception of our monkey mind, represented by the continually waxing and waning moon. Yes, the mind and the moon are closely related, as I've talked to you many a times. And the moon is a playmate of our keenly perceptive valor, Muruga. So that's also another way of looking at it, as Maruvum Valari, somebody who played with the moon, okay, as a child. Magilkali-kurum, becomes immensely pleased. Magilchi, Rajni dialogue, that you remember. So Magilkali-kurum, becomes immensely pleased. Vadivone, pleased to do what? To look at our handsome valor's lovely figure. Vadivone, Vadiv, handsome valor's lovely figure. Vanamurai Vedan. Vanam Urai Vedan is one way of looking at it. And Vana Murai Vedan. Vana Murai Vedan. Two ways of looking at it. Let's see. Our own creativity, which deteriorated to a poaching Vedda tribal huntsman. Vedda is also coming from Veda. Somebody who follows the Veda, Or it also comes from Vetai, somebody who hunts. So somebody who is hunting, in the past it was a hunter for an animal, but we seekers are hunting for truth. So we are also hunters and gathering knowledge from various sources. So we are hunter-gatherers actually, not hunting and gathering food for the mouth, but food for the thought, right? And our spiritual evolution. So Vanamurai Vedan is our own creativity which deteriorated to a poaching Vedda tribal huntsman, Andiman, who lived in the southern Sri Lankan forests. So this is a legend, okay, that Brahma was cursed by Muruga, and Brahma, the arrogant creativity of ours, took the form of Andiman, a tribal huntsman in southern Sri Lanka, southeastern actually Sri Lankan forests, right? So our own creativity deteriorated to not a normal hunter but a poacher, one who poaches. So Aruliya Pujai Magir, again Magirchi is coming. Aruliya Pujai Magir. Okay, Vanamurai Vedan, Aruliya Pujai Magir. So our own creativity which deteriorated to a poaching Vedda tribal huntsman, Andiman, who lived in the southern Sri Lankan forests, offered his own unique tribal invocations, which also was gladly accepted by our keenly perceptive valor. Where? At Kadirgamam Udayone. Kadirgamam Udayone is the next phrase. So Kadirgamam, another of our keenly perceptive valor's favorite consecrated spots. That's where this hunter Andiman, the cursed form of our Brahma, the creator or creativity, was offering his own unique ways of the poached stuff, and our valor was accepting it until a refining process took place. What is that? A small story. Is a meaningful legend actually associated with this line of aruna-giri-nāthar, who trekked all the way to southern Sri Lanka 600 years back. You can imagine that. Of course, 5,000 years or 7,000 years back, the army of monkeys led by Sugriva, Jambavan, Angada and Hanuman crossed over, building a bridge. So that would have been accessible possibly by that time, 600 years back, to aruna-giri-nāthar, or he might have to take a boat. But then after that, trekking from northern Sri Lanka to through all its eastern parts to the southern Sri Lanka, where Kadirgamam is, amazing place of pilgrimage, very similar to Paramudir Cholai, about which we will talk later as well in terms of geography, history, etc., and the kind of communities which live there. So southern Sri Lanka 600 years back, aruna-giri-nāthar went there. So once our own creativity, Brahma, claimed the entire credit for our valor, Muruga's righteous duty consciousness. So this is another episode involving our creativity and our valor. So creativity claimed the entire credit for our valor, even though the valor was doing its righteous duty consciously. So that annoyed our valor, and our valor cursed our creativity to be born as that hunter Andiman. To restore our haughty and disdainful creativity to its right place, our valor cursed it to be born as a hunter, or rather poacher, in the jungles near a ray of desire. Kadir Kamam. Kadir, a ray. It could have a ray of hope, a ray of the sun, a ray of the moon. But here, what are we talking of? A ray of desire. Kadir Kamam. And therefore associated with Valli. If it's the rightful one, right? Rightful desire, that is. So now in Sri Lanka is Kadir Kamam. The avatar of our creativity as a poacher was a dusky man, Andiman. Andi means dusky, Andiman. Man is come from man, okay, Andiman. And notice the similarity with Andaman and Nicobar Islands of India, right? So our cursed and doomed creativity savagely pursues the homicide or murder, in simpler words, of Pippalada, a Maharishi who is the seer of one of the 12 major Upanishads, the Prashnopanishad. Again, almost all Upanishads are questioning. This Prashnopanishad is a questioning Upanishad. Prashna means question, that is. So Pippalada was the seer or Maharishi, the great seer, literally, of this Prashnopanishad, which occurs in the Atharvana Veda, and a lot of verses of the Atharvana Veda are also ascribed to the seeing of Pippalada Maharishi. In fact, Pippalada is a partial avatar of our own nothingness, Shiva, that which is not, born to Maharishi Dadichi. Many of you will be familiar with him because he voluntarily sacrificed his bones to create a weapon for our passionate aggression, that is our Rajasic gunas or devas. Thus, his wife also committed sati in his pyre, and thus orphaning their child, Pippalada, under a peepal tree. That's why his name Pippalada, because he was raised under a peepal tree. He in fact grew up eating peepal leaves, another reason why he's called Pippalada, and meditating on his own and our own original final form of nothingness. Blessed thus with a deep sense of perception in the form of an intuitive third eye, the great seer Maharishi Pippalada recognizes that his attacker, the poacher, Andiman, is none other than our own creativity, Brahma, and advises Andiman to refine itself, the dusky nature, to refine itself into its original nature of creativity. How? Through a transformatively taming and sacrificially nurturing penance during Kritika Nakshatra. In Tamil, it's called Kirtigai. A monthly occurrence, auspicious, one of the 27 constellations. A monthly occurrence once in 27 days approximately. Auspicious to the nurturing foster motherliness of our valor. I talked about it in a massage and message discourse as well, when Shashti and Kritika once happened together. So you can take a look at that for more details. So taking the advice of the natural expression of our nothingness, Pippalada, our till then poaching creativity invoked a ray of desire, Kadir Kaman, for all, who, by the way, is in the form of our righteous duty consciousness, symbolized by the lance or veil, the first of 4 Purusharthas. Our poaching creativity's invocation is accepted by our valor, which spontaneously transforms the repenting poacher to royalty, to savor and relish the next 2 Purusharthas of prosperity or artha and desire or kama. Our valor also blesses our creativity, Brahma, to be ultimately liberated via moksha, the 4th and final Purushartha, dharma, artha, kama, moksha. Sorry for the tempting detour to southeastern Ceylon, down under, not Australia, but in between. Let's get back on track for not one final time, but 2 final times. I'll have another detour as well when we talk about Paramudir Cholai. So our tiru-pugazh continues. Jegagana jegu, tagudimi todi, dimiyena aad, mailone. Seemingly foot-tapping rhythm, right? Not just that. So seemingly foot-tapping rhythm into which actually many amazingly mystical elements have been jam-packed by the phenomenally powerful octa-engined or ashta-siddhi endowed siddhar that our saint poet aruna-giri-nāthar was. On the literary plane, this stanza has an alternate meaning. Again, like two other stanzas also, I told you alternate meanings. The ganas or categories with jaga gana, ganapati, So the ganas or categories with jaga or jagat or the world or Sura Padman. Those who are in the army of Sura Padman, namely the worldly natured asuras, representing our lethargy, laziness and inertia, are here contrasted with those who had the qualities of thagudi. Actually, it is coming as a sound, thagu dimi to di. I combine thagu with di, the intellect, thagudi as a one word, instead of saying thagu dimi to di. I see, thagudi mi to di, right? So beautiful meanings arise by just moving around the space between the words. This is the beauty of it. So the ganas or categories with jaga or jagat or Surapadman, namely the worldly natured asuras, representing our lethargy, laziness and inertia, are contrasted with those who had the qualities or tagudi, capabilities or the right badges to be led by our valor, namely Veerabahu, Devas, et al. The others. The former and latter, that is the Asuras and the Devas, are equally amazed at our warrior dancers' USP skill sets. What are his USP skill sets? Dancing on the peacock as well as the warrior command that he has, right? So our warrior dancers' USP skill sets and techniques are so amazing that for different reasons, of course, our lethargy looks at it amazedly, and our passion also looks at it amazedly. The Asuras and Devas, that is. And ena aadu mayilone. So all that musical foot tapping, rhythmic sounds, and then we say ena aadu mayilone, on whose beats our keenly perceptive valors, handsome carrier, our own blissfully ecstatic nature, symbolized by our national bird, the peacock, dances, thus offering our valor an unforgettable ride of a lifetime. Yes, it is our own bliss on which our valor ought to ride to fulfill all our duties responsibly. If we are not blissful, we are not going to do our duty consciously. So it's a prerequisite that we become blissful so that we ride on our bliss as if it's our peacock, as if it's our vehicle, and then the valor ought to ride that to fulfill our own valor, of course, has to ride that to fulfill all our duties responsibly, consciously, successfully, and of course, ecstatically. And as we shall see in the very next phrase, our duties have to be accomplished efficiently and effortlessly too. It's not just accomplishing our duties responsibly, but don't do work for the sake of doing work, my dear friends. Let's do whatever we need to do efficiently and effortlessly. And definitely not through the unfortunately popularized and so-called hard work. It's touted around as if it's some great thing. Never. Hard work is the worst thing that you can do. It's specially reserved only for stupid donkeys amongst us who don't love their work. If you love your work, if I love my work, why the hell would I do hard work? I would do efficient work effortlessly. So for the rest of us who have fallen in love with our work, it's always an effortless worship. Kayakave Kailasa, as Basavaya had said. Basavanna. Work is worship, if you love it. So, Tiru Malivana Paramudir Cholai is the next. Tiru Maliv Ana Param Udir Solai. Claimed by Nayanmar Sri Nakira Peruman, yes, the one who said, Netrikkan Thirandalum Kutram Kutrame. Shivaji Ganeshan delivering that dialogue so wonderfully in Thiruvilayadal, right? That is, the original person is Sri Nakira Peruman, almost a millennia ago, more than a millennia ago. So claimed by Nayanmar Sri Nakira Peruman in his Tiru-murugatrupadai. Tiru-murug-atrupadai. R means 6. So, in the context of Paramudir Cholai, I have to say this. It was Nakira who first introduced this concept of the Arupadai Veed, right? So claimed by this Nayanmar in his Tiru-murugatrupadai to be the 6th and final of the most powerful consecrations. There are thousands of amazing consecrations that the descendants of Bharat have done in Bharat and in Akhanda Bharat all around the world. The Sapta Rishis who went to so many different continents, almost all the continents of the world, except perhaps Antarctica. So, amongst them, these 6, Arupadai Veed, and the 6th and final of them, is the most powerful consecration of our valor. Param Udir Cholai, true to its name, is indeed an oasis. Like in a desert where you're thirsty and want water, you see mirages all around because of the internal reflection of the light. And then you actually see real water. That's an oasis in the desert, right? So it's a treasure where you didn't anticipate treasure at all. You've been getting illusions of treasures but never finding the treasure, and finally find the treasure. That's an oasis. That is Cholai or Solai, right? Paramudir Cholai, Solai. So true to its name, Paramudir Cholai is indeed an oasis or a cholai of honey dripping ripe fruits. Param, orchards, not just fruits but fruit orchards. Udir, Paramudir is a ripe fruit orchard where naturally the forest wealth, Tiru, because we said Tiru Malivana Paramudir Cholai. What does Tiru mean here? Right? The forestry wealth. Where naturally the forestry wealth, Tiru, is not only plentiful and bountiful, but easily and freely accessible. That's why we say Malivana, Tiru Malivana. You're getting treasures effortlessly. This is what I said in the previous stanza also, right? Don't work hard for your whatever you need. You work intelligently and therefore efficiently. They can be effortless if you love your work, right? So same way, freely accessible. Malivana, Tiru Malivana, treasures of the forest are available freely through the eternally omnipresent sheer grace of our valor, keenly perceptive valor. Just as all life-giving resources such as sleep and the air we breathe are still freely available, right? You need to pay to sleep. You need to pay to breathe. Though unfortunately the water we drink has over time become costlier due to our own stupid ways, of course, of life, such as deforestation and pollution and the many other things which accompany it. Otherwise, water would have been free as well, right? Fresh river water, unpolluted and retained because of the massive amount of trees in the forests. All that's gone, but has to be brought back. And the most precious lifeline of all is not even air, not even water, and not even sleep. The most precious lifeline of all, any guesses? Is absolutely free, this thing, even now, where everything is going into a business. People are going into even buying oxygen for breathing, etc. Right? So the most precious lifeline of all is not only absolutely free now, but can never be commercialized by anybody forever. What's that most precious lifeline of all, which is still absolutely free and will always remain absolutely free? Grace. Arul. We talked of Arul Perum Jodi in the previous episode. Arul. Grace. Essentially, everything that is unbounded, like our canvas of time, space, and the sky, is free, while everything that is bounded comes at a cost, and the cost in terms of effort required to acquire rises exponentially as the boundary becomes more and more stringent and constraining and thus materialistic. In the case of the free and freely unbounded metaphysical spirituality, you see Akasha, how free it is. You see Vayu, how free it is. You see sleep, how free it is. You see grace or Arul, how free it is. So in the case of the free and freely unbounded metaphysical spirituality, however, it's like a ripened fruit that just falls into our open palms all by itself from the tree. Not your tree or my tree, but the forest tree, common to all. Talking of fruits or param in Tamil, Paramudircholai also happens to be the place where one of the all-time great saint poetesses, Ma Avvaiyar, was teased by a young boy atop a jamun or navel tree. I don't know what jamun or navel is called in English. I should check. Nomadic and devoted that she was, despite her old age, she trekked long distances, even in hot summers, to various consecrated places and happened to be at Paramudircholai, thirsty and hungry, when the little and seemingly illiterate rural boy, sitting comfortably on a branch of the tree, tall tree and a high branch, asked her if she would like a few juicy and nutritious jamun or navel fruits to quench her thirst as well as hunger in one shot. You don't have to drink and eat to quench your thirst and satisfy your hunger. You can do just by eating these juicy fruits. Both the thirst is gone and the hunger is gone. One shot. So the super smart Avvaiyar responded, "Yes, please. You would be immensely blessed for your kind offering." The boy then shocked her with a second query. "Would you like to have cooked fruits or raw fruits?" Avvaiyar was taken aback by this tricky question. He didn't have some cooking equipment like a stove or something or fire on top of the tree. You'd burn the tree itself. And who cooks fruits for that matter, whether it is boiling or roasting or whatever, right? So, unless these days we make apple pies, etc., forget it. So, or bake cakes and put fruit toppings on it, right? So, would you like to have cooked fruits or raw fruits? Was the question the villager boy asked. Avvaiyar was taken aback by the tricky question and was dumbfounded for a while. He then reposed his inquisition. "Would you like the fruits hot or cold?" Sounds like somebody behind the fast food outlets like McDonald's asking you, right? "Would you like the fruits hot or cold?" She then assumed that the boy was just joking around due to her age. Little boys make fun of old men and women, and replied that she'd like one of each. How smart she is, no? She didn't want to show off her surprise or confusion, so she said, I'll have one of the cooked hot fruit and one of the raw cold fruit. He then threw just one small fruit, which he claimed was raw and cold, directly into her hands for a simple, easy catch, which she immediately munched away. Then he shook the branches to make bunches of fruits fall down when she asked for a hot fruit. A warrior picked up some of them from the soily ground and found them to be dusty, so she blew over the dust before she could eat the fruit. Promptly the smart kiddo inquired, Granny, are the fruits too hot for you? You're blowing over them. It's then that the world-renowned poetess who had sung the Vinayagar Agaval and so many other great songs and was lauded by her peers. It was then that this renowned poetess recognized this was not an ordinary boy, let alone an illiterate villager. So immediately the little so-called ordinary boy transformed into his real form, which was symbolic of our own keenly-perceptive valor and courage to seek liberation. That is Muruga. The Paramudir Cholai Murugan temple, or Solaimalai Murugan as he is called. This temple is situated, very small temple, situated right atop Alagar-malai, on whose foothills is the famed Alagar Kovil, which I happened to visit recently, maybe in, 2017 December, along with my family, my sister, and her daughter. A wonderful time we had there. So, yes, the Paramudir Cholai Murugan temple is situated right atop the Alagar-malai, the small hillock, on whose foothills is the famed Alagar Kovil and of our own everythingness, and 25 kilometers north of the even more globally recognized marvel of architecture and consecrational science and technology, yes, the Madurai Meenakshi Amman Kovil, or temple. Visited just this week, by the way, by our Honorable Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Bhai Damodar Das Modi ji. So let's get back on track to wind up our poem of the day. The last phrase is Malai misai mevum perumale. Malai misai mevum perumale. Malai misai mevum perumale. The mountain there is your favorite. That is the Alagar mountain, right? The Alagar Malai, as I tell, or the Solai Malai, Paramudir Cholai Malai. Malai misai mevum perumale. The mountain there is your favorite, you great one, referring of course to our own valor, which loves challenging treks, hills, mountains, ranges, and occupies every such peak. No, the army, navy, and air force also like to occupy, especially the army, like to occupy peaks to have the visibility of the surroundings, both of friends and foes, right? Potential foes. So yet it remains subtler than the subtlest. Our valor, it occupies every peak, but is still invisible. like our army. It occupies the peaks, but is like a chameleon, camouflaged, invisible, stealth technology, right? Remains subtler than the subtlest, smaller than the subatomic particle of a God particle, the Higgs boson, with no footprint or shadow whatsoever on the massive hillock. Malai misai mevum. That's the magic trick of efficiently packaging the infinite into the infinitesimal, putting infinity into zero. Let me now quickly summarize this tiru-pugazh. We are done with phrase by phrase interpretations in an Advaitic sense, or yogic sense, siddha sense. Our own valor to liberate ourselves from the clutches of cyclic death and rebirth is centered in our solar plexus. Such a profound valor of ours, being the foremost in the universe, as the letter or A is in all languages, the leader, the greatest and inner self of all, the creator, protector, destroyer, Trinity, and the one above the Trinity too, Mahakali, dark energy, being all things in this world and in any other perceivable world whatsoever, subtle or causal, not only the physical, an embodiment of sweetness. Our valor is the one who comes to our rescue from this vicious karmic cycle of seemingly never-ending actions and reactions and actions and reactions and actions and reactions, following Newton's third law, instead of transforming it all into a game of leela, blissfully and ecstatically playing it with kriyas rather than karmas. So in this vast world, our valor has no choice but to come rushing towards us as soon as it is invoked, so that we too can redeem ourselves as Jivan Muktas, just like aruna-giri-nāthar, transforming from seekers to seers by removing the K for karma and making it K for kriya. Our handsome valor's majestic personality immensely pleases the rule of our sensually passionate aggression, or Indra, the Murti, Vigraha, Pratima, or deity who presides over all offerings. The poacher Andiman, who lived in the forest, made an offering which our valor gladly accepted at our ray of refined desire, Kadir-kamam, our valor's favorite place. As the rider on our dancing bliss, Mayil, peacock, Ananda, symbolized, of course, but reality is our dancing bliss, is what our valor rides upon. Our valor liltingly resides on the mountainous fruit orchards, Paramudircholai, where wealth is plentiful and effortlessly available as in an oasis. Let me conclude with a personal experience this week. It blends well as Tuesdays are auspicious not only to our valor of Muruga, but also another equally valorous symbol of ours. To cut the long story short, I was meditating on Anjaneya, Hanuman, Bajrangbali on my terrace a couple of days back, while fasting for 42 hours as usual every fortnight. This time for Papa Mochana Ekadashi, but for some other Ekadashi or the other every fortnight. So I was meditating on Hanuman, having fasted for almost 40 hours, fully aware of the surroundings, as always in my meditations, I suddenly heard growling sounds. When I opened my eyes, it was a closed eye meditation. I do some open-eyed meditations as well, but this one was a closed eye meditation. When I opened my eyes, to my pleasant surprise, I saw two big monkeys, one of which was sitting right next to me on the granite slab, and the other was on the grass carpet below, looking up to me. Vasanthi-mā, who was just after finishing her walking and gardening, was picking up the flowers to be offered to the deities and to Papaji. So she witnessed the scene of these two monkeys, one sitting next to me, one sitting right at my feet, and growling at me. And she got scared that the monkeys might attack me. They, however, left without much ado when shooed away. Jai Bajrangbali, Jai Shri Ram. Vasanthi-mā has wonderful plans to contribute a special song for your Sri Ramanavami celebrations on the 21st of April this month. In the meantime, wish you all a happy lunar new year, chāndramāna yug-ādi, coming Monday, actually Tuesday. It's the latter half of Monday and the first half of Tuesday, so most people celebrate it on Tuesday. So that's the lunar new year, chāndramāna yug-ādi. And solar new year, right next day, varśa pirappu, coming Wednesday. So Puthāndu nalvāzhthukkal. Hosa varśada shubhāshayagalu. Plava-nāma sam-vat-sarā ellorigu belakina dariyannu thorisali. Vetri-vél murugan-ukku haro-harā. ஞானதண்டாயுதப்பாணிக்கு haro-harā. பழமுதிர்ச்சோலை முருகனுக்கு haro-harā. கதிர்காம முருகனுக்கு haro-harā, haro-harā, hara-haro-harā.
aruna-giri, aruna-giri, aruna-giri-nāthar. aruna-giri, aruna-giri, aruna-giri-nāthar. aruna-giri, aruna-giri, aruna-giri-nāthar. aruna-giri, aruna-giri, aruna-giri-nāthar. aruna-giri-nāthar pāhi-mā. aruna-giri-nāthar varśa. Jaya Guru Shiva Guru Hari Guru Ram. Jagat Guru Param Guru Satguru Sham. Om Mangalam alankāram Guru Mangalam Guru Padamangalam. Om Mangalam alankāram Guru Mangalam Guru Padamangalam. Om Sarvana-bhavaya Namaha. Om Sarvana-bhavaya Namaha. Mail-vahana, 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 mail-vahana. Haro-harā, Swami, haro-harā. Haro-harā, Swami, haro-harā. மயிலுண்டு பிணையில்லை, வேலுண்டு பிணையில்லை. மயிலுண்டு பிணையில்லை, வேலுண்டு பிணையில்லை. ஆம் पुरुषाय विद्महे महासेनाय धीमहि तन्नः षण्मुखः प्रचोदयात् ॐ मुरुगा ॐ मुरुगा ॐ मुरुगा वेलायुधा मयि वाहना